Hello, Reject Nation. It's Greg Alba here.
I'm John.
So we're going to talk about a movie that should have been released in January and might have gotten better reception if it did. But because it came out in February, it's a terrible movie, apparently.
Yeah. Extra week made such a difference.
Screw this movie. We're talking about, of course, none other than Winchester.
The Winchester?
Now, last time we did an official movie review, not the Call Me By Your Name one, but an official one, was the Post. And so we said we're going to be re-implementing our reasons to see list, where we break our reviews down by reasons to see and reasons not to see.
Bullet points!
And I want to start off before going into that we don't think this movie's as terrible as everyone's making it out to be. Before doing this review, I saw it had a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. Granted, it's not great.
It's just not that, it's not terrible, it's not particularly great, but it's got its moments.
It's got its moments. Anyway, let's hop into this list, please. Reason to see number 1 is Jason Clarke.
One of the many Australian actors playing an American in this movie.
Yeah. Jason Clarke, who you know from playing John Connor in Terminator Genesis. He's one of those actors that I think has the potential to become a really huge actor. Right now, he's one of those, like, oh, people know of Jason Clarke, but he's not top caliber yet. Especially, I think even looking back on the trailer, I don't really remember even seeing him that much in the trailer.
He's in it. I watched it this morning, but I just completely forgot about it until the movie started, and I was like, what, Jason Clarke?
He's actually the real lead of the movie. Helen Mirren's more of the supporting role. Like, she's the main character, but the supporting character at the same time.
She's the one who all the intrigue centers around.
Yeah, and Jason Clarke plays this therapist who is struggling from PTSD, essentially, and he's also addicted to medication. Basically, he gets assigned on this mission to go meet with Sarah Winchester. The Winchester people created those guns, the Winchester rifles and whatnot.
Heir to the Repeating Arms Company.
Company is trying to boot her out, so they want him to basically diagnose her as clinically insane or something like that.
Unfit to lead.
And Jason Clarke's performance in this film is a big part of why I think this film is not terrible. If he sucked, this movie, I would easily agree with everyone else, because he's the one who's primarily commanding the screen for majority of this film. He's one of those characters where the first half of the movie, or majority of the movie, is like, I believe in ghosts.
I do not believe in anything I cannot see or study.
But a lot of the time in horror movies, that trope can really irritate the crap out of me. He really sells it. Everything about the way his character is written and his portrayal, his subtlety, his nuances. He's a multi-layered character. He's a guy who puts on a personality and a facade, but really has a lot of deep, dark depression.
Yeah, it didn't feel like this movie needed him to be skeptical. It felt like a natural choice for that character. And, you know, it states its theme very early on, as you pointed out, and he does a good job at driving that home. And I mean, he gives a very lived-in performance, considering the kind of movie this is. Like, he showed up to it.
Yeah, I think he gives a great performance.
Yeah,
actually.
He does. He does, and he elevates the material. There are times when it's kind of beyond elevation, but there are also other times where he elevates the material or really brings it to life. You know, so
absolutely.
In an uneven movie, he shines kind of throughout. Reason to see number 2, Helen Mirren. Sort of.
Yeah, Helen Mirren is in this film.
She is. And for part of it, people just kind of spend time info dumping you about her life, and then she shows up and she's like, hi, I'm spooky, and then she leaves again.
What was weird about the characters, Helen Mirren makes the character interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like the writing did lack on making her character that much more interesting.
It took a while for that character to start feeling like they were actually giving her material to work with.
Yeah, I feel like the idea of putting Helen Mirren on the reasons to see section of this video is more because of the intrigue of wanting to see Helen Mirren in a horror movie.
Your anger will never defeat us.
And playing, you know, like a noto, it's a good role in terms of subject matter for her to play. This is a historic place. It's real. It's a real person.
Yeah.
You know? There's weight to this.
She does elevate the film a little bit here and there. It's really because the writing doesn't really give her much to do rather than cliche woman who's in touch with spirits and demons.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like Elise from Insidious is a much more intriguing character than this character.
Yeah, and that's a complaint in terms of the scripting, but in terms of just her performance, I thought every scene she showed up for, she brought something to.
Yeah.
Again, kind of like Jason Clarke, even if it wasn't supporting her, she was still supporting it.
Yeah, and also Jason Clarke and Helen Mirren, they work very well together.
They do. In fact, some of the best moments in this movie are just scenes where they're sitting down and talking and the characters are actually developing a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And that goes for some of the supporting cast, too. I mean, there are some good, smaller performances, especially from Sarah Snook, who plays Sarah's niece. And she's an actress I've seen in a couple of the Spirig Brothers movies, and she always does a terrific job, and especially, again, in a movie like this, she brings a good amount of weight to a character that could have just been bland.
Pretty much the whole cast is pretty solid in this film.
Yeah.
Even like the little roles, the supporting roles, they're all very good in this film. It's something you can't discredit this movie on, is that the acting in it is really good.
Yeah, and everyone showed up. Nobody just collected the paycheck on this, I didn't feel like.
Reason to see number 3, the finale. We're going to be hopping into our reasons not to see in a second here.
Yeah.
But I would say the finale was surprisingly intense.
Yeah.
I'll admit that the first 2/3 of this film, all the horror movie stuff, wasn't that scary to me. There was an occasional good creep moment. There was an occasional good jump scare moment here or there. But the finale actually had a good like 10 to 15 minutes that was actually kind of pretty scared right now.
When the real climax of the movie started, it took me by surprise. I was like, oh, this movie seems like it's heating up toward the end now. That whole finale sequence grabbed me so much more. It felt like the third act of a different movie, sort of. Every element came together finally to make something that I was totally pulled in by.
Yeah, and also there's some twists and reveals there. Some of the twists and reveals it didn't dawn on me until I was going to bed what you were doing in the theater when they were doing twists and then you started humming the Saw song.
Well, because
they know what you were doing.
There's at least one moment where they flash
twist,
back
twist,
to
twist,
something.
Yeah, there's a lot. And it's funny because they just came off of Jigsaw. These directors. Because the twist has some stuff that in it that's clever. There's some stuff there where you're like, that's a little silly. Overall, I mean, the twist and reveal part, I wasn't expecting that to be in this movie. I thought it would just be like information we learned, but there was stuff there like, oh, there was some foreshadowing that they were doing that was cleverly handled. Some of it it was just a little cheesy, but there's other elements to it that were good, and I thought overall the character arc was predictable but good.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the point in the movie where, like, it's shot the best, it's the most intense, it's the scariest, and it also borrows from this sort of spiritual mythology, like there's some actual cathartic character moments, and this whole thing about why the spirits are there and the connection to the house, like, that kind of makes the finale have a good amount of weight that's beyond just scares, you know, there's an actual kind of a meaning to it, and it does make the rest of the movie kind of worth it to me.
Alright, let's move on to our reasons not to see, people.
Reasons not to see. Lackluster writing and cliche haunted house tropes.
So the first 2/3 of this film, like everything before the finale, is intermittent in very specific ways. What I found really weird about this experience is it's not like a tone in this movie. Spirit Brothers tend to steer away from that. It's not exactly a fun tone either. There's a weird livelihood tone. It's a period piece film.
It reminded me of From Hell for some reason.
Yeah, it's more along that tone, I think. Because what was weird to me about it is there was, okay, first off, there's some pretty bad expositional dialogue in here, especially in the setup of the film.
When the first moment that's about to kick the plot off happens,
catalyst.
there's like a 5-minute scene where somebody just gives you an entire biography of Sarah Winchester.
And you could justify it like, well, he has to. At the same time, it doesn't feel that way. And I think there's a pretty good amount of moments. I said it right when the movie was done. The Spirit Brothers to me are more concept people than script people. And John, you said like they could use a punch-up writer.
They actually, this was written by somebody else, and they did some rewrites on it. I found
interesting.
From IMDb, and it's written by a guy who's only done like 1 or 2 other small things.
They were trying to get information he didn't have. I don't understand.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, they need a different writer.
Yeah. This movie
because this is a problem they tend to have, I think.
There is. It's kind of uneven in the sense that some of the character scenes are pretty good, and then others are just here's some exposition and we're moving right along. There are a lot of shameless jump scares. Although, on the flip side of that, usually they're technically effective.
Yeah.
They're just not always more than a jump scare.
I know the cool thing to do, especially on the internet, is bash jump scares. Like, the second there's a jump scare in a movie, a lot of people are like, ding, hate the movie.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way about jump scares.
Not even in this movie. Like, I felt like they made sense just as much as they would have in an Insidious movie.
There was a couple of jump scares that really got me. That were truly clever, in my opinion. I think they tease it in the trailer, though, which sucks. The mirror sequence.
Yeah.
They do show in the trailer.
I think so.
I forgot all about that.
I think they show part of that.
But when I saw that in the theaters, there's more to it than just what they show in the trailer, and it really did get me. And there's a couple moments that are leading into the finale that really got me, too.
The horror movie elements and the period drama elements don't coalesce really until the end. However, I do think that the Spirit Brothers have a certain grip on eerie tone and aggressive jump scares that occasionally do work in this movie. They just don't always blend together.
Well, the weird part about it is when it wasn't being a horror movie is when I was most intrigued by what was going on.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like what they could have done is dial back a lot of the cliche, predictable tropes that they would sprinkle in randomly through the first and second act.
Don't worry so much about the Conjuring and like Annabelle shit.
I felt like there was reminders of, oh yeah, it's a horror movie.
It's a period horror movie. Those are in.
They could have had it be a build-up movie to the finale, and the finale would have been that much more intense if there wasn't these silly jump scare moments and cliche horror movie tropes that kept randomly thrown in. Because whenever it wasn't doing that, that's when I was most intrigued by the film. When there were character scenes or intense sequences. There's intense sequences that happen with Sarah Snook's son in the film. I don't want to give it away because they don't show it in the trailer, but there was a couple of moments there that I thought were intense and weren't played as jump scare moments. Whenever it wasn't being horror movie, that I was most intrigued. So that was the weird part of the experience, because when it was horror movie, I wasn't liking those scenes.
They just didn't have as much flavor and as much, like, what makes this movie unique, I guess, is a lot of the dramatic stuff, partly because you do have a rich history to draw from. If this was my movie, I would have approached this like The Others or something like that.
Yeah.
I think they utilized the house pretty well. It's like, it's well captured and stuff. There are times, especially throughout those first 2/3, where you're like, I'm reminded of many other horror movies.
Yeah.
I feel like this could have been longer a little bit, you know? It's like a solid hour and a half. Because of that, it feels like kind of a haunted, you know, just your standard haunted house.
That's why I was saying that they could have dialed back some of the horror movie trope stuff and then made it a build-up movie to the finale, which I thought would have been way more effective.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, well, yeah, I mean, would I say this movie's as awful as a 12% or however rating everyone else is making it out to be? I wouldn't, because I truly think that in our reasons to see, there are stuff here to appreciate that does elevate it from that.
Yeah, there's good work in this movie. It's just that there are a lot of better, more coalescent haunted house movies.
I would say it's okay.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, there you go. There's my rate. It's okay.
It's all right. It's not without its charms, you know. And the fact that it came together at the end and the climax is actually kind of whole, you know, that elevated it like a half star.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, you can subscribe to The Real Rejects. Click that notification bell to get notified every time one of our videos is up. You can check out our Patreon. A lot of exclusive videos over there. A lot of exclusive perks as well. And download and follow us on the Stardust app. Posting regularly on there, peeps.